Hi everyone, welcome to the AIMS360 Fashion Business Podcast. I'm Sharuz Kohan, CEO of AIMS360. So AIMS360, we're all about making life easier for fashion brands, whether it's tracking styles, production, staying on top of inventory, handling all of your orders from the different sales channels, if you sell direct to consumer, wholesale, to major department stores with EDI. So it's one system instead of juggling a whole bunch of tools, which saves time and cuts down mistakes and helps brands. So that's what our show is about, and we're going to talk more about the business side of fashion. And today we have Frances Harder here with us. Frances is the founder of Fashion for Profit, and she's our author of several books: Fashion for Profit, Costing for Profit. Her books are a guidebook for anybody starting a brand or looking to expand their brand and get you organized. So, um, welcome, Frances.
Thank you. Sure.
You've also taught at several of the colleges, right? Like Cal Poly, Otis, FIDM, right?
FIDM, Otis was my big full-time professorship there. I'm on the board for Cal Poly. I've really done a few lectures, but not really taught there as a position. But yeah, LA Trade Tech, Pasadena City College. But yeah, my favorite rate really and most productive was at Otis College of Art and Design. And while I was there, I realized after teaching and being in design and in construction that if they didn't get the business side, we saw so many people failing. And so I instigated a class, further education class on the business side. And that led me into, you write the 16 weeks out as a lesson plans, it turns into the book. So that book, now in its 11th edition, I wrote in 1999, I think, when I started the FBI, Fashion Business Incorporated, an educational nonprofit. That's where we became good friends, worked together, and realized, what AIMS has got to offer to new companies is a really important part of their own business. And as you explained, some of the things you do, and of course, costing sheets as well, and spec sheets you do as well.
Correct. Yes, spec sheets, bill of materials for costing, and ultimately once orders comes in, margin calculations to see if people are staying profitable. We see that a lot where when we first demo and talk to the clients, and especially if they're still within that, let's say, $1 to $3 million range, or even lower than that, you ask them more about their margins, and they don't really know too much about their own margins, right? They're just trying to make sales.
Mm.
They're just trying to move forward. And, at some point, you got to get organized and figure out, is this going to scale up, or how can I change things to make things scale up, right? So when you have that information, you can make those decisions. So yeah, I mean, it's really important what you were saying with the colleges. And I think one time I was speaking to someone at LA Trade Tech, and I said, why is it that there isn't more focus on the business classes in the fashion schools? And she said, well, a lot of people just come in for fashion design. That's like where the demand is. So we kind of have to, you know, take him in through there. But the business side is obviously, I mean, if you can make the best designs, if you can't run your business, it's not going to get anywhere, right?
No, and it's become, the whole industry, as you know, has changed so much. Now they're buying smaller orders more often because they're testing the market more. They're not putting in the great orders that they used to do, buying 5 times a year. They're buying more often in smaller quantities. And then, of course, we've got this whole other tariff issue going on as well. How do they negotiate that? Is that something that AIMS can help them with?
So we track the landed costs and everything, so then they can compare different vendors and see which ones, the tariffs are lower or what it is. So that helps them track that information, tracking the tariffs as they come in. And also we handle the HTS codes. So those HTS codes are handled with the tariffs. It's basically the harmonized information for your product so that you know which percent tariff you fall into.
What was that? What was that? HM? What was it? I
It's
don't.
a HTS code, the harmonized tariff information. So basically it says, oh, your product, let's say is, nylon, whatever it is, right? And then you can look it up and see what the tariff is for that.
Oh, right. It's good then.
Yeah, so that's helpful for a lot of the brands there.
That's yeah, that's another useful tool because now, as we know, it's such a complicated business, and it's not just about designing a lovely dress. You've got to find out who would be interested in it, what market you would go into. Obviously, you can't go into fast fashion, but so where are you selling to? Are you selling to small boutique stores or maybe hopefully getting some bigger orders? What kind of movement are you seeing now with your companies?
We're seeing a lot more traction on the people who have stronger brands. There's a lot more uh opportunity there as opposed to brands like you said, which are just fast fashion, because fast fashion is kind of a pricing game sometimes as well.
Absolutely.
So that's the problem with some of this fast fashion stuff. So if someone doesn't have a strong brand, they can't really get the pricing that they need. And a lot of times you're also now put into the commodity business in a way, right?
Yeah. And then, of course, how are they handling production and are they going offshore? Are they doing domestically? We're seeing a lot of struggling with some of the factories have closed up here, some of them I know. Um, this issue of producing domestically is something we've talked about for years, but it takes infrastructure, it takes planning. So
Right.
this is a thing that really is it's a little upside down. I think we needed to get the infrastructure in place before we start, you know, costing tariffs on everybody because it's just making it more expensive for everybody else.
What do you see with production here? And we see a lot of our brands, maybe they produce their samples here and then they do the rest overseas. Is there any shifts you see now with people concerned with tariffs and what they're trying to do?
Well, of course, that's all pretty recently occurred. But I'm seeing there are new factories being built, and they're using also robots to produce the goods too. You've probably seen that with goods that don't need as much, as you say, sewing or production. You can do with relatively easy things if you're doing it on a robot scale. I've
Mhm.
seen it, American Apparel, Los Angeles Apparel, right? That
Yes,
does.
yes. That's
So I know he's got some kind of computerization in production, but it's a very, very sad situation because we haven't really invested in this industry, which is a big industry, as we know. So I'm not sure where it's all going to go in the future. And of course, the tariffs being added. Where do we go? Are there still free trade countries? I don't think
yeah.
there are. Are there?
Yeah, it's a little difficult to know what's going to happen next, right?
Yes, it is. So how do people plan? And when you're talking about you've costed a garment without tariffs and you've given those quotes to people, and then now they've added the tariffs. So how does that impact their own company? Suddenly, one company I met at Magic recently, she got her first order. She's selling to small stores, and so
Mhm.
she got her first order from a department store being produced off in China. And so I think the order was for 30,000. Anyway, it came up to be 90,000 in the end. So it's really, I don't know. I don't know what's happening, but it's a very big alarm, I think.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of the customers that just start joining our software. They'll generally already have some online presence, and it seems like also the boutique stores and the department stores themselves, when they're buying, they're like, oh, well, this brand is already has some traction, so I like to buy from that. As opposed to before, we used to see, we've both been in this business for a pretty long time. It was on the person's name. You would come in and you'd be like, oh, I had this other two brands before, and I'm just gonna come up with this new brand name, and can you start selling it? And the person will be like, at let's say Macy's, okay, great, we'll start selling this product for you, right? And there would be no other information about the brand. It would be like a new brand, right? That they would be introducing. But nowadays, they really rely on both the social media and the e-commerce aspect so that it has some kind of a voice before they allow it in their store, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a new brand, right? They're not copying somebody else's brand, right? I mean,
Right.
one of the things that I do that actually makes earns me a little bit of money is expert witness work. And I've seen so many cases of, and I've even heard it at colleges where the teachers will say, "Oh, you can scan in a design, change it 30% and say it's yours." Well, if it looks the same, it is the same. You're going to get sued, you know? So there are so many different things like that, or a patent, where you put a patent on a garment and suddenly somebody else comes out with it. So find your own products and invent your own products and design your own products. Don't get tempted to steal other people's ideas. Of course, we have to go with the trend, but that trend doesn't mean to say that you have to be copying other people. You should be coming up with your own concepts of what you think of what you feel would be a good seller. So Shiruz, tell us what with your software is it's rentable, right? Or
Yeah,
do they
so
buy
it's
it?
cloud-based, and I would say between 2021 and now, a lot of the changes that we've done has been in automations and warehouse management, whether it's someone's own warehouse or 3PLs, just getting that process automated. So a lot of the orders now, when they come in, if there's, let's say, for example, stock, it'll just automatically get routed to the warehouse, and then the warehouse ships it out. It does have its own warehouse management as well now built in with inventory tracking, so you can see when your production is coming in. And when your production comes in, if it's, let's say you're doing wholesale and it's for a wholesale order, it'll automatically get allocated and reserved for that order. So some of those automations are really important when people are scaling their business, because you don't want to keep having to hire people to just do manual work, right? That adds cost in, and then that cuts into your profit margin. So you want to be able to do more with your existing team members, right? And grow the business with the existing team members. So um the automations really allow that.
And do you also have RFID also part of the software?
Yeah, so we have RFID, and we still don't have too many customers on that, but we do have RFID, and mostly I think the implementation of that, just general implementation of RFID for smaller companies is more difficult. For larger companies, we have a couple of our larger companies that are using it, especially if they either have their own stores or they have multiple warehouses. It really helps them track their inventory and figure out what they have in stock, not have to go out to the warehouse and count things. It has helped in that portion. I think the technology is getting there. The pricing of, the tags itself is getting to a point where it can be more and more affordable for customers, and companies will start using it more and more as time goes by. So that's kind of like the nature of technology, right? It moves forward, and it gets easier, and more cost effective to use.
Now, RFID, you've got that. If they need it, they can use that. And EDI, can you explain what EDI, like electronic data interchange, is for
Yes, it's
them?
a very important part of the business. So, bigger retailers won't want to get transactions with PDF files or emails or things like that. They're gonna want to get it through something called EDI. It's called electronic data interchange. It's the way that brands and retailers can talk to each other. So what'll happen is the retailer will send them the order electronically. That order gets picked up into the AIMS 360 software. And then from there, it'll go through the warehouse, it'll get packed, it'll get shipped, and the shipping confirmation and invoice again get electronically sent to the retailer to give them that information. So they don't want those things manually anymore because think about it. You have, let's say, as an example, Nordstrom, and it gets to their distribution center. The guy doesn't want to go through his invoices to find the invoice to figure out which item is coming in, right? It's like all of that is just built into their system electronic. They just scan it in, it comes in, and it's done, right? So it really keeps their costs down on their side so that they can process your products in quickly. Sometimes they might even give, like we've seen on smaller brands or brands that have just gotten introduced to some of these retailers, they'll give them an exception. And then on the back end, they're actually charging them a little bit more because somebody is doing more manual work at the retailer. So they'll buy at a lower price or they'll, add some fees somewhere to offset for that. So at some point you want to, as you're scaling, you want to move to electronic data interchange when you're selling to these retailers because that's the way to work with them. It's their trusted way. They've always worked through this electronic data interchange. They don't want to really work other ways.
How are you finding, because I remember sort of talking to groups of people, the effects of chargebacks? We've got small companies who are selling to small stores and not going to the big department stores. But once you start selling to department stores or think of selling, you need to prepare yourself for exactly how they work. I mean, I know now, as we talked about earlier on, that they're buying more often, smaller quantities, but they can kill you with one chargeback if they
Right.
make a big order and then suddenly they don't sell, so you get charged back. And that's something that's made quite a few companies lose their businesses with the chargebacks.
Yes, we see a lot on problems that happen with retailers is chargebacks and returns.
Yeah.
Those are the two things that are killers that we see happening sometimes. So you gotta make sure to block that. We block chargebacks that are system related. Obviously, we can't block chargebacks, like let's say for example you send them items and it's the completely wrong size because the factory packed it incorrectly. Like there's no way for the AIM software to control that. But we do control everything that is in the electronic transaction. Like if the barcode was right and everything, you're gonna ship out the correct goods and you wouldn't get a chargeback that way. The retailers are really looking for problems that could happen. That's how their chargeback departments have started.
Yeah, on it.
They're looking for issues and they want to use the fact that they're trying to prevent issues to basically then charge fees to the brands to get discounts, to get money back, to return products at times. And now, when they do smaller quantities that are drop ship, meaning they have you direct ship it to the customer, there's obviously a big return problem with that. And there's really no way around that. I mean, Amazon has really, unfortunately, for the brands, have set the standard to the customer that, oh, you can buy anything whenever you want and return it. And you should get it in, 2 days. And when you want to return it, it should be free shipping back. So that's difficult for some brands to handle. I think you have to now start considering that in your costs. We updated all of our margin reports at some point to handle returns because it's like there's just no way if you don't calculate returns into it to see what your margin is. So basically, you have to figure out your return rate as time goes by and adjust your margin, which means that at the end of the day, the consumer is paying for that convenience of being able to return it, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point because it all goes down to the costing, right? That and the returns, people, maybe I've heard people talking that they've seen a dress or shoes or something, and they buy it in three different sizes to see which one fits, and then the rest go back, or they all go back if they don't fit. So we're dealing now with a hell of a lot more kind of difficulties, right? And so the more educated you are, the more you understand the business, whether it's a small business, a big business, whatever, that's the most important part for you as a manufacturer, is creating new garments and then, of course, doing the costing and making sure that are you selling direct or are you selling to a third party? Do you have a sales rep? Sales reps, they need maybe 12%, 15% commission on everything selling. So that also needs to be calculated into your cost sheet. So there are all these different parts to someone wanting to be, oh, I've got this wonderful idea and I want to make these garments. And, if you don't really understand the rest of it, Shahruz, like you were talking about, then you can lose your savings in no time. We've seen that a few
Right.
times.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We try to really get people into a specific process inside of our software so that they follow that process and they run reports and try to prevent that as much as possible. That is something we see. What other things do you see? Let's say, we can kind of like go through different maybe sized brands, like a small brand that starts up, like where do you see their challenges that they need to watch out for?
Because they're a small company, they're probably only working with themselves and maybe somebody doing the sampling. And, as we know, it's such a complex business. So I always say start slow and get your contacts because the contacts, as we know, are very important, and also finding trustworthy contacts is another important part. It's really a growing, it's sort of learning to grow with it because today it's nowhere near as it's just a different business, very, very different business as it was years ago. And I think for startups, maybe it's good. You can do, pop-up tents. You can do, I know I've got people doing active sportswear and they're selling at sports clubs and they'll do like an afternoon where people can come and choose and try on direct marketing. So how are you figuring out how to sell your goods? If you have a sales rep, as we talked about, you've got to calculate the interest that they charge. And you're not going to have a sales rep just for your own garments in the beginning. And maybe you have a sales rep who's a road rep who just goes around and goes to see the different stores. The ones with like in the New Mart, the CalMart, they've got their rent to make. So they charge the designers who they have in their
Right.
store a percentage of the rent so that they can, and then plus a percentage of sales. So it might be 12 or 15%, depending on,
Oh,
what the garments are.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
Tricky.
And then when they go, let's say they get past that and they get now to the mid size, that's also like when AIMS really becomes, AIMS 360 software really becomes important for them because that's when they have to set up systems to scale it. Like, what do you also see in that mid-size range that causes problems for those brands?
Well, again, like it's this growing problem, and you need, like with you, when people get your AIMS system, you give them training
Yes.
how to use it.
Correct. Yeah,
So,
and that actually we changed that over time because now that people sell into so many different sales channels, right? It's like you kind of have to be everywhere. Now that people are selling everywhere, and now that people are trying to track all these different values inside of their software, we actually have an implementation team that goes with the clients, and they're basically making the software fit into the business, right? So they'll have calls, daily, weekly calls with the client to see how they can use the software to make themselves more efficient.
Does AIMS do for retailers as well, have a program, or is it just for the
Yes, actually, we do have a lot of brands that are retailers as well. In the mid-size, we've seen a lot more of these mid-size brands going and opening different stores. It's kind of has become a trend after the whole, reopening after pandemic. A lot of people want to get out there and shop at the stores. So brands will strengthen their brand name by opening stores, and if they do it in the right area, they can, make some good profit. So those brands usually will have like a warehouse, and then they have their stores, whether it's one, two, three, four stores, and then they'll replenish their items from there. If something is not available at the store, it can be, sent from the warehouse and so on. That's become really important for some of these brands lately.
yes, it's certainly a business that's evolved in a very different way and makes it kind of okay. You can say, well, you're selling direct, that's easy, then you can do your profit margins that way because you're selling a direct sale. But if you sell through the stores, then of course they've got their markup, and their markup could be 120%. So if you're selling for $50 with your markup, maybe if you've got 100%, you made it for 25 and you're selling it for 50, then the store's going to sell that for like 110. So you've constantly got to be thinking, will this garment bring in $110 when it's sold in retail? Or are you trying to sell direct, either pop-up stores or wherever else? Or are you marketing directly through Amazon? There are so many different ways of doing it, and it's kind of it's pretty tough. And the other issue that's made it really tough is there's no real trends. So we can wear whatever we want. It used to be you had to wear a mini skirt or hot pants and big shoulders. I mean, you can wear whatever you want. You can wear hot pants and big shoulders, and it's all in one way or another. So
Right.
it's all about merchandising more than anything, isn't it?
Yeah, and sometimes the fact that people can wear whatever they want, and there's kind of these silo communities, some of the problems that that causes when you have a brand sometimes is that the growth, like you can get in quickly, but then it's hard to grow further because now you're kind of siloed into this specific, right, type of a trend in a specific area. So you got to watch out for that as well. The business has definitely become more complicated. Even if what you talked about pricing is like, how do you price now that you're selling, into department stores, and then now you have your own e-com, and then you have, a store now that you open. So now you're in all these three different places, and it's like, okay, well, if you always, let's say, undercut in your own e-commerce store, the retailer you're wholesaling to, they're not going to stay for long, right? So you have to make sure your pricing is working together, right? So that it doesn't cause a problem that way.
Yeah, it's an exciting industry, but it's really changed so much. You have to understand the dynamics of the changes that have occurred, really. And are you producing domestically or offshore, or what all that, how's it affecting you? So it is still exciting, but it's still rather rapidly changing, isn't it?
Yes, it's still rapidly changing, and the countries where people are producing is all over the place, it seems. So that's changing. I mean, that could sometimes be advantageous, sometimes not, right? So it really depends. And when you get your product, depends on where you're producing, right? So we've seen change in production, and then orders come in late. So you got to watch out for that, right? You
Well, yeah,
can't just
then
change the
because if it
country
comes in
without
late, yeah,
considering when it's going to arrive, right?
yeah. If you're coming in late, then you're going to be shipping late. So they're going to cancel the order because the stores rely on these merchandising. So they've ordered tops from you and bottoms from another lady or wherever, whoever. So they want to make sure that they all come in at the same time. So they're constantly having to analyze what their sales are. And of course, sizing is another thing. In America, it's very confusing. It used to be, well, Europe, it's much stricter. The sizing is stable. Whereas here, a six now
Mm.
probably would have been a 12, 10 years ago. So
Oh my gosh. Hmm.
it's changed so much. I mean, you look, I mean, I've got all my patterns from doing pattern making, and you can
Yeah.
see the sizing. When I go into stores, I look at that and see the difference in what the sizing are. So you have to understand what your market is and your sizing and your costing, your price points. And that's where AIMS can help them. So I'm proud to be working with you all, and always, well, probably about 30 years we've been working together one way or another.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're so informative always. And, you talk to so many brands that it helps. We can always shoot around ideas and you can tell us a little bit about, where things are going and what changes are happening. So yeah, and there's definitely a lot of changes happening in the technology end with AI, and we see a lot of people doing things in 3D, or they're even just putting their product photos on models using a lot of these softwares that'll just automatically put your product photos on the models. It's not all perfected, obviously. Sometimes they put it and it doesn't look correct, but it's getting there. It's getting there and it's gonna continue to evolve. So it's interesting to see all of the changes happening.
I know there was a fashion show at the Newmart, and they showed the garments being created on the computer on a virtual person, and then once they decided they'd done the changes and the design and everything, and then once it came up, then the model walks out from the curtain from behind of the actual finished garment. So yeah, I mean that's another good way of producing goods, isn't it, without actually making the sample.
Yep, yep,
So
exactly. Great. So yeah, thanks so much for being here and sharing your insights, and
yeah,
check out francisfashionforprofit.com, right? That's
yes, thank
your
you.
website, and AIMS360. Obviously, you can check us out, and we could get you a product demo. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast, and you can also subscribe on our website as well.
That's great. Look forward to having it finished, and I will also put it on my website too.
All right,
So,
thank you.
yeah, thank you. Good to see you.